You're listening to Shoe In, covering the ins and outs of all things footwear, from sneakers to heels, loafers to slippers, and every type of shoe in between. Brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. And now your footwear insiders, Matt Priest and Andy Polk.
Welcome back, everybody. Sitting in Matt's chair today is Thomas Crockett.
Hello.
Welcome, Thomas.
Thank you.
He's going to co-host this episode with me today because we're going to get a little bit technical, which is what we need to because there's a lot of folks in our industry not doing due diligence like they should be. Womp womp.
Womp womp.
But you should.
There we go. That's back already.
Exactly,
right?
Exactly. One of the things that we like to talk about on the Shoe and Show, because we're covering all the ins and outs of footwear, specifically to the business side of our industry. You know, Jasmine does a great job, and we're going to pull her in later in the episode to talk about a fashion footwear focus segment on something fashionable. But we really want to drill in on best practices and tips as companies look at how they design shoes, develop shoes, source shoes, bring them in. And there's things in our industry that we have to deal with that, you know, obviously we want to make sure we cut out as much cost as we possibly can when we're making product,
right,
so we can sell it affordably. But there's some things you just can't cut out.
Exactly. And so that's why we've got some specialists here today to really talk to us about kind of at a high level why you want to have product safety and chemical safety programs in place and the importance of that. And so, as Andy said, we're going to get technical today, but not too technical. So don't tune out. It's going to be fun too. So
well, you got to tune in because it is a money issue, not just in terms of cost, but if you don't do certain compliance standards in our industry, you'll get hit on the back end.
Right.
And if you're really a huge violator, you may not even be in business. So
exactly,
this is one of those things where you need to lean in a little bit more and listen a little bit more closely. And today, to help us kind of unpackage some of these things, especially related to chemical and quality compliance issues. First is Josue Solano, who is the corporate president and chief operating officer at BBC. Josue, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. And then also joining us is Kapil Bansal with TÜV SÜD, who's a testing lab, and Kapil runs the U.S. side of the business here. Welcome, Kapil. Kapil's his first time, but Kapil is a expert when it comes to quality issues and testing issues.
Thank you, guys. Thanks a lot, and looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, awesome,
great.
So let's tee it up to start off with Josue from a corporation and a shoe company perspective. You know, sometimes when we talk about compliance, people may roll their eyes or they may not think it's just something you have to do to cover CYA, right? It's just something we have to do, but it's not that important. But in actuality, it's really important, correct?
Yeah, it is, and it's funny that you say that because I do get that a lot. But in our company, compliance rolls all the way up to the top. We see it as something that's very, very important. We represent a lot of brands and a lot of retailers globally, and from a brand perspective, brands spend millions and millions of dollars trying to prove to the customer that they stand for something. And quality and compliance is one of those things that's expected. The last thing a brand wants to do is to have a recall on its brand or have bad PR saying that their products that they're selling are not safe for consumers. From the retailer perspective, the same holds true. They spend so much money trying to acquire and retain customers and getting that foot traffic into their doors or onto their websites. And the last thing that they want to do is to have a compliance issue that's published out there or that causes them to do a product recall. So unfortunately, although sometimes this topic may seem like a pain in the neck to a lot of people, it's a critical component of the production process. And there's a lot of rules and regulations all over the world, by state, by country, by region, that you kind of have to keep track of, and you have to make sure that you're sourcing from responsibly. So it's a hugely important topic.
And to add to that, there's a lot of chemicals. There's so many chemicals, and there's a lot involved, as you said.
There's like REACH, Prop 65, like hundreds of chemicals.
State level chemicals. Yeah. I mean, all over the country. I mean, there's so much to keep track of. So with that in mind, how do we manage this Josue, how do we manage this without bankrupting the company?
That's a good question. It definitely won't bankrupt the company if you do it intelligently and strategically. Yes, there's a lot of chemicals out there, but I think the first piece of the puzzle is to really understand your product category and understand the inputs as to what's going into your manufacturing process, and to kind of categorize the chemicals that you expect to find in your products, to understand what the regulations and the bans are against those chemicals, and then to protect yourself against. So there's millions of chemicals, but not all of them go into every single product category. So really, the first piece of the puzzle is understanding, what your product category is, and then understanding what the inputs are, all the way down to a bill of materials, if you will, and then understanding, from a chemical perspective, how that marries up to the regulations that are out there for the country or the region that you're shipping into. And from there, you start to paint a picture of what you need to attack and what you don't need to attack. And there's a lot of strategies for how to test and when to test, that are cost-saving measures that we're happy to share with anybody in the industry.
And we've heard a lot too about reasonable testing programs. How does that work? Can you talk about that? What are your thoughts on a reasonable testing program?
So, reasonable testing program is actually an industry term that's pretty defined. If you are in the children's product category, there's actually 6 elements that you have to follow to qualify your program as being reasonable. And if you're in an adult, a non-children's product, there's only 5. There's a little bit less stringent. So since children's is more stringent, I'll just quickly walk you through what those 6 are. First and foremost, you have to have certification testing. And what this means is that you have to have a third-party approved laboratory or partner testing your materials on the front end. Secondly, you have to have a periodic testing plan. So what we do at our company is we test our materials before they hit the production line, then we do testing during the production line, and then we do testing at the end of the production line. But you have to have a program that's built around kind of interval testing that leads you to a high degree of assurance that from the beginning to the end, you're going to have a product that's compliant. You also have to have, as a third element, a policy in place for material changes, whether it be a material change from the supplier or a change in the production process, and how do you handle that? The fourth element is you have to have a policy around undue influence, and that has to be documented, and you have to train against that. Nobody wants somebody in the process influencing a lab to give a result that may not be true. So you have to have very stringent policies around that. The fifth element is a corrective action plan. It doesn't always go perfect. So how do you build a plan within your system to, once you identify an issue, how to jump into it and to correct it very quickly, and move to a resolution? And then lastly is record keeping. I think there's a 5-year element that you have to retain your documentation, so that as you ship products and if there's an issue, you can go back and trace where you are. So reasonable testing program, there's really, even in children's where it's most strict, 6 elements that you have to look at. I hope that doesn't sound overwhelming, because once you kind of get into it, it really is not overwhelming, and it's very easy to kind of build a program that you can be successful with.
It sounds very methodical. You've explained it really well, and it sounds very strategic, because I think a lot of people, when they come at this, they just say, "What do I need to test?" They're not really thinking about a strategy around this. That if you do have a strategy and you're not just testing every Tom, Dick, and Harry chemical out there, you can actually lower your costs and better target where your risks are. So, Kapil, when people come to you, TÜV SÜD, asking for tests, obviously there, some of the, especially newer brands coming into it, say, what do I need to do? Are you helping them think about this stuff, just like Josue talked about, being more strategic and focusing on more high-risk chemicals?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think the first and foremost thing is that, we need to really have a plan as to what are we trying to achieve. Are we Are we trying to cover, the entire regulations and all over the world? I mean, it depends where these brands are selling. And from there, we start developing a plan for them, okay, which state in America these guys are selling, what kind of chemicals are restricted. And again, as Josue rightly said, I mean, we don't have to test each and everything. I mean, we need to understand that, what chemicals are going into which material, where are they being sourced from, how those could be avoided, what kind of sourcing of material is happening. So we basically work on a plan, what we call it as a test plan or test protocol, or we could call it even a quality manual, and give it to the company, and from there we start the journey, working with them, going to the suppliers, understanding their production processes, and then starting testing at an early stage, at a raw material stage, just to ensure that what is going in the final production is already tested and already passed the stage. Otherwise, it's hard for any company to stop producing at an advanced stage. What we also recommend and what we also do is that we would go to the factory at say 30 or 40% of the production time, and pick up a sample, so that we don't get a golden sample, and test randomly, so that those are the 2-3 steps we take just to ensure that what final product is coming is safe for the consumer and meeting all the required regulations.
That's great. One thing I really enjoy about the podcast and our events is we're always talking about innovation, new materials. We have a materials summit. We've done, innovation summits, and people are always talking about new materials, new components, new technologies. When you're talking about that, how does that play into product safety, Kapil? Are there some things that people need to be thinking about if they're going to be using kind of these new components? And when they think about innovation, how does product safety tie into that?
It does. I mean, definitely see any new material. I mean, definitely there is a greater amount of product safety risk unless we know the background of it. So again, it's not so much related with product safety, but there is now a lot of buzz about 3D printing, right? So when it comes to product safety, and if there is any new material in place, definitely, we would again do our due diligence just to make sure that the banned chemicals are not there. But with the technology being so advanced now, I think the supply chain has gone more matured over time. I mean, if you compare now and say 30 years back, see, as an example, azodye or even lead, you don't see so many occurrences of those chemicals, because everyone is getting more educated. They understand. Even the chemical companies, chemical manufacturers are making sure the kind of dyes they use, so it's getting more matured, and people are getting more aware about these chemicals. So it is becoming, I would say, yes, it's getting complex, because the production is in multiple countries, not only in China. It goes to Vietnam, Indonesia, Bangladesh, India, getting into Africa, right? But at the same time, there is lot more awareness. There is lot more education. So that's making, I think, our lives better, and I would assume even Josue's life a little simpler.
And I'll turn it over. I'll ask Josue this too. Kapil just talked about the importance of accountability and not, the golden sample. You don't want to find the golden sample. You want to find something that's authentic, that's real. And he talked about education. Josue, is it important to really train your suppliers, your manufacturers, your internal team? How often do you need to do that?
Good question. Yes, it's very important. It's ongoing, actually. I think internally, you have to have a training minimally one time a year, and we actually have anybody who touches this team sign off on the training. With your suppliers, whether it be a factory or manufacturer, it's ongoing. You want to have partners that you believe, and we believe in the trust but verify principle here. So we want to keep them. We do almost quarterly training with our manufacturers and make sure And you know what? I think, like Kapil said, we agree. We do random testing. We'll go into these factories, we'll pull materials at different stages, and we'll send them off for testing. And if the results come back bad, then we are able to trace back. And at that point, you have an opportunity to work with the factory owners and the suppliers and educate them on how they got there and identify why you got there, and then fix it going forward. So with your outside partners, it's consistent training. Internally, it's minimally one time a year.
Great. And I would say, to the listeners out there are tools and resources that can help you look at risk management. And one of those is something that FDRA has developed along with TÜV SÜD, which is an RSL, an industry footwear specific RSL. And it's by level. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that Josue is our product safety chairman of our working group and helping oversee how we look at risks, how we look at chemicals, what we should be testing for as an industry, trying to set standards. And under his leadership, we are rolling out a new version of that RSL. And people can go to, I think it's globalfootweartesting.com. And find that. And it's both chemical testing by tier, where we look at where people, tier 1, have to test that for sure, tier 2 and tier 3 as well, as they look at that, as they look at their testing programs. And again, the components that Josue talked about and the location of sale that Kapil talked about. But also on there, interestingly enough, is physical testing things as well. And I know we talk a lot about chemical stuff. Physical testing, gentlemen, is equally as important, right? And especially from Josue, from your perspective with children issues, you got CPSC, very concerned about choking hazards and things like that. So I think you guys have to do even more due diligence when it comes to physical testing as well, yeah?
Absolutely. Footwear is a performance product. You don't have to be running on a basketball court. You can just be walking down the mall. The outsole has to adhere to the upper. You have a flex point in the shoe. You don't want to slip or slide or skid. And there's a lot of physical components, physical testing that we do in the process. Prior to a shoe being made, materials in their raw form are put onto machines, and we stretch them and pull them and do all of these things. I do want to take a second to give the FDRA a plug here. The FDRA has built a tool as it relates to physical and chemical compliance. That's amazing. You're able to go in there and you're able to check your product category, you're able to check a country, and you're able to hit a button, and it will tell you exactly what you have to test for that country that you're shipping to, and that's globally. And even within the United States, there's specific state laws that are different than the federal laws, and you can go down to the state level. So the tool that the FDRA built in conjunction with TÜV SÜD is very informative, and for anybody listening who doesn't have an entire team built around compliance, you're able to go in there and very, very quickly identify what you should be testing for from a physical perspective and a chemical perspective. So this big universe that may be overwhelming for everybody all of a sudden becomes very understandable.
And we want to thank TÜV SÜD for working on that too. They've really helped us both with the initial one and also doing the update to make sure everything's current for 2019. And so really want to thank them for their work on that as well.
And I want to say something especially about this as well, because this is a tool that people can use to educate retail partners as well, because what we also see is, and I'm not going to name a lot of names, but there are retail partners who the person who's in charge of compliance is in charge of shoes, apparel, toys. And we constantly have to remind people that footwear is not the same as a toy or not the same as another category. And based on, testing labs like TÜV SÜD looking at risk issues, we can identify what are higher risk things and not test for everything that might raise the cost of a shoe. And I think that's why it's extremely important to work with a lab like TÜV SÜD that can help focus that. So Kapil, this is just a softball tee up for you guys. As far as, when you're looking at helping those folks figure out risk and help them talk to their retail partners and figure out a testing plan, what are some steps and ideas that you can share about that?
To have all those plans in place, I think there is a lot which goes from our side. It sounds easy, but on from a lab operation point of view, we need to have a very, very strong and robust quality management system, because see, at the end of the day, what we are delivering is an assurance to a company like BBC, who have been a great partner to work with. That whatever you guys are putting on the shelf is safe for the consumer, for a child.
Right.
From a chemical compliance point of view, and what Josue rightly said, I mean, shoe doesn't have to come off on a basketball field. Even if you're walking on the road, so it should stick. And so a lot goes from our side. We need to have a robust quality management system. We need to have a globally harmonized SOPs and methods, because as the supply chain is getting more and more global and complex, people are producing all over the world, and we cannot give different results from our different labs, which are in different parts of the world. It has to be, we need to speak the same language with the globally harmonized procedures, methods, and SOPs. We touched upon technical training. I mean, it is so critical for us, for a lab like us, that, again, people have the same judgment, same knowledge, and we need to give them regular technical training to make sure they are up to the speed with the new regulations, with the quality systems and all that. And then there are issues like internal audits. We have 4 Eyes principle, a spot check program. We didn't touch upon so far about correlation study, which is also very, very critical, that we do internal as well as external correlation study, just to make sure that we are doing these programs regularly, just to make sure that what we are doing internally is also correlating with other parts of the world, other labs, other institutes, and then definitely the accreditation. We are ISO 17025 accredited lab. So I think, other than providing the test plan, or putting the protocols in place, there is much more which goes behind the scene for us to ensure we are delivering a quality result to our customers.
I was thinking, you can't really escape this product safety stuff. This past weekend, I can't remember where I was. We were running a ton of errands, but it was at one store, and I picked up something, and on the back it had the new Prop 65 warning, which is really scary. It's like warning cancer, and that's the new warning.
You've got it.
Or warning reproductive harm. So and that's like a short form warning to make it easier for people to in California, in the mind of the state legislature, to comply with that. But it's a little scary if you're a consumer and you pick it up. But that just got me thinking. I've seen that in a lot of places. We also track all the state stuff, and so there's a lot going on at the state level. And there's things that people may not be thinking about, and we try to do a good job of highlighting that and keeping people up to date. But just wondering if you guys is there one issue or one topic that maybe companies need to be thinking about or paying closer attention to, something that you think we should highlight for them?
I think if I was giving guidance to the street, it would be, first of all, to understand your product category. Secondly, develop a standard operating procedure or roadmap on how you're going to manage compliance for the regions that you're going to be shipping to. Third, I think you have to find a lab partner like we've done with TÜV SÜD, and work with them on testing protocols, request forms, and communication. The training we covered, you have to train internally and your suppliers. And then you have to have a corrective action plan. And then staying informed, which is what we're talking about right now, like the tool with the FDRA. California Prop 65 it's one state, it's California, but for a lot of manufacturers, it affects everything, because with the boom of online, we will ship goods into one centralized location in the United States, for example, a warehouse, and from there, you might ship that product to 50 different states. So if for everything going to California, you have to have this label on it, do you segregate your inventory? I mean, these are the issues that these regulations kind of affect. And that's why sometimes if you buy a faucet from a faucet company, you receive it, and even though you live in Florida, you've got that scary California Prop 65 label on it, because all of the inventory is commingled. So I just think understanding your products, where you're shipping to, and these regulations, utilizing the FDRA tools, will give you a very, very clear picture on what you need to do. And then for the complicated issues that you might have that you're not sure how to handle, that's what trade organizations are there for. That's why we have a committee, the Product Safety Committee, and then your lab partner is always a very good guidance in terms of what to do from a chemical and a testing perspective. That's the guidance I would give to the street.
I think that's pretty good guidance.
That's great guidance.
I hope people are writing that down, and if not, you can email us and we'll provide it to you, because I think that's hugely important, and it's, as Josue always is, very strategic and focused on execution and excellence. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
We want to bring in Jasmine now to talk about her world famous fashion, footwear, and focus segment. And this is something where Jasmine will tell us what's fashionable right now, and then we want both Kapil and Josue to weigh in on what they think about that.
Okay, so this may not be a menswear trend, and I'm not 100% sure, but some of you guys can tell me. I've seen a lot of it's runway season, and when you're looking at when you're looking at the runways, you're looking at what's going to be hot and what's coming next. And I've seen a lot of animal print more than normal, like leopards always in and things like that. But I've seen more like tiger stripes and cows, and I'm like, okay, but there's been
cow shoes.
Cow print. I'm sorry.
Right. That's what I meant. Cow print shoes.
Yes,
wow.
Cow printed shoes. Either whether it's like a loafer and there's a small panel of fake cow fur. I just am interested in do menswear have any animal print? Do you have any animal print in your closet?
I think Andy does.
Right.
I do not.
All my shoes have animal prints.
I'm starting to think it's a woman's trend, but I'm not sure. Kapil, what about you guys?
Yeah, Kapil, any animal print shoes?
No, man, I do not. I mean, I don't know whether it's fortunate or unfortunate, but I'm happy not to have those. But I know for sure, the other side of the closet, which belongs to my wife, that definitely does have few.
Okay, so maybe it is just a woman's trend. That's fine.
Josue, what about you?
Jasmine, even if I did have it, I'm not sure I want to confess it on this open forum here.
Understandable.
But you might find a leopard loafer in my closet. It's possible.
Okay.
Nice. All right.
Yeah, that's very nice.
I think from a frat perspective, I know they have like critter pants with stuff on that. I wonder if this is bleeding into that. So you might see like preppy people wearing that. People have a lot of money who get bored with their typical ensemble, but I don't know. I'm not.
Okay.
I have nothing like that. It's either like brown, black, or white in my closet.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm just not. It's hard enough to like make an ensemble fit together with interjecting some like shoe that's multi.
Yeah, what goes with that? I mean, what do you wear with that?
You have to dress it up, a leather skirt, some
like an ascot.
You just make it all animal.
I want to thank Kapil and Josue for coming on today to talk about this subject, and I really want to thank them for being thought leaders in our industry on this and helping us really think through about how we develop product that helps people, because ultimately, there's a lot of people out there who've been working on this in a long time who forget different things, and we hope that the tool helps them. And we also hope that the global footweartesting.com helps new people to the industry to make sure that they're making product that is safe and secure for consumers. So thank you both, gentlemen, for coming on today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having us. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.
All right.
Folks, as always, Shoe and Show covering the ins and outs of all things footwear. If you have a topic you would like us to discuss or issues you'd like to discuss, or if you have an idea for a guest that we should have onto our show, please drop us a line at shoeandshow.com. Also, please subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, on Spotify, anywhere you can get your podcasts, so that you get their weekly download every Monday morning and give it a listen. We thank you for listening. We thank you for your support. And until next time, Shoe In is out.
Shoe In has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.